Hello, Art 195 class, and welcome to remote instruction for class on May 6th. Look forward to seeing your presentations today on the Zoom meeting at 3 p.m. The invite will be inside of today's announcement. And let me we'll switch gears now, talk about next week, which has a process check that just has a little bit of difference to it and how we turn it in because of the remote instruction. Okay, so you have your very last chapter assignment due by 4 p.m. And you can either email that to me as you have been doing, or you can put it on the discussion board for May 13th. Because as I'll talk about, there's already 2 things that you're going to have to post on that board anyway, so it might be easier just to do everything on the discussion board. So here we go. The other thing is a process check on the magazine cover, which is a good mask all around you in each side of your image, meaning isolate yourself from the background. So this is a process check for a preparation grade. It's due by 5 p.m. or earlier if you wish. You need a very good mask around you. That will earn you 40 out of 40 points if it's really good. I'll ask to see your mask against a solid background color. Actually, I'm going to ask to see it against 2 solid background colors. Normally, we just did that in class. I'd walk around, but what we're going to do is I'm going to show you right here in this video how to make a JPEG of your PSD file with a blue background, and then how to make another JPEG of your PSD file with a red background. And then you'll just simply post both of those to the discussion named May 13th. And you know what I'm going to do here just to make things easier is I'm going to just change the due date of this to 5 p.m. as well. Then you don't have to worry about getting one posted at one time and another one posted at another time. I was feeling generous, so I just made them both 6 p.m. All right. So now let's take a look at how you would do this. So I'm going to go to the demo that I used. Okay, so imagine this is my project here, and I have completed the mask of her from the background. And you can see that's done here if I turn this off. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is, for grading purposes, is give me a copy of this with a blue background and a red background, just a solid color. So here's how you do that. You're just going to create a new layer. Well, actually 2 layers in this case. So click here again on create new layer, and we're going to fill one of them with blue, one of them with red. And there's an easy shortcut to fill the colors that are on your foreground and background color. So you're just going to double click on the foreground color, select red, and just pick a real, vibrant saturated red. Click OK. Then we'll click on the background color. We'll click in this area here, or use these sliders to get into the bluest of blues. Click up near the top right-hand corner to get a fully saturated blue. And then we're going to make sure that we're clicked on one of these layers here, and we're going to, on one of them, do Option Delete. And then I'll drag this down here. And then we'll click on the other one and we'll do Command Delete. So Command Delete fills the background color, Option Delete fills the foreground color. Then we just need to drag these layers down below our mask. Okay, and then once you put a bright color against it, you just have to decide, is that good enough for a good grade? This would be, like probably a B+. It's not a bad mask. It's good along here, pretty decent along here, but as you can see, it's got some problems here. So, since this is your final project in the class, to get a high grade on it, you're going to have to probably do a little bit of manual work on here. So what do you do in this case? You still want this kind of stuff, right? But we don't want it so that we're seeing parts of the other background through it. So this is where you have to kind of take a little bit of artistic license. And this is why masking is so great, because you can always add to it and subtract from it later. But we'll click on the mask, and then we will grab, well, you can pretty much choose whatever tool you want, but in this case, the brush tool makes the most sense. We'll go up into the options for the brush setting. We definitely want the hardness at 0, so very soft brush. And then we can try some different sizes, but usually a real tiny one is going to be your best friend. And the critical thing here when you do this is just making sure that when you draw in the mask, you're drawing in the direction of hair. So let me switch the foreground and background, because we want to get rid of a little bit of this. So what I'm going to do is just inside of here, I'm just going to start. So I'm just kind of clicking and dragging in the direction of hair. And if you have a Wacom tablet, this works really good. And you just kind of go through here. I mean, you can even kind of go in this direction with this little strand of hair. And if you think it's being too harsh, what you can do is you can change, oh, the opacity is already down on mine. But if you go with 100% opacity, you're basically going to be able to cut through here like a fine knife. So I'll Command Z that. So usually you don't want the opacity up real high. That's going to give you softness, in that you have to go over some of the areas multiple times to get what you're after. But if you're not exactly on top of the line you made previously, that will add to the randomness of it, if you will, or giving it the more hair-like quality. Now, you also have to remember here that how much work that you actually do, really need to do when you're doing a real-world project does depend on what background it's going to be on. Because excuse me, I'll select a lighter blue color, and you'll see that there's probably no work or very little work that needs to be done. So you can see with this real light blue color, there's just a couple areas in here that stick out as needing work. In fact, let's see what happens if we cheated even more and selected this color. I have the letter I for eyedropper tool, take that out, change the color here, do Option Delete. And well, it brings up its own set of problems. Now this area is more like it was before, so I think this would probably be the easiest to work with color. I just have to go in here. Now I'm trying to tell you a lot of information here, so let me just pause on the extra information and let's just finish up how you would turn this in, but then I'll give you some more tips for turning this in. So we do need to get a blue color on this layer. Okay, so now all you're simply going to do once you have this finesse the way that you want it for turn in is go File, Save As, and then in the menu here you're going to select a JPEG, and then you're just going to pay attention to where you save this, click Save, click, oh yeah, okay, it's going to be fairly small, so its size isn't going to be, a file size shouldn't be a problem. Okay, then once you got that one saved, make sure that the PSD document is still opened. If not, or if you took a break or whatever, just make sure you open up the PSD document before you do the next step, and then just leave only the red background layer on, and then do your File, Save As, JPEG, save that out, and then turn in those two files to me. So now just a couple more tips on masking. So one of them is that you can wait until, this is a real world example. Obviously for the process checks, you got to get things as good a looking as whatever grade you want to get. But keep this in mind, that the other way to do some of this stuff would actually be to paint on the actual image itself with maybe the background color. So you could grab, and not even the background color always, sometimes the hair color. So let me just do this. And what I always suggest is before you try something like this, because files are pretty much free, is make a duplicate of the file that you're working on. And the shortcut for that is just Command J. That gives you a copy of that. turn the other one off because see how it adds to it. And then what you can do is actually take the eyedropper tool, grab the hair color, grab the brush, and make sure the opacity is fairly low, and you could paint a strand of hair on top of that. And you got to make sure that you're on the actual layer, not the copy. Now my opacity is really low, so I'm going to beef it up a little bit. You get the best results keeping the opacity low and just adding a little bit at a time. Maybe my brush is just a little too small too. And it helps to zoom in. Yeah, you can see I've been making some scratches here. It's just that the brush is so small. But if we keep doing that, and then every now and then going back and maybe even changing to, say, this hair color, trying to get as least amount of reflected light from the original background as possible. Oop, didn't mean to do that. Just meant to hit I to get the eyedropper. Okay, so now I'll switch to this color. B for brush tool. Start painting this color in. And you can see before long, this is never going to look great up close, but before long you'll be able to zoom out and you'll be able to fool most people with how good your mask is because you did a little bit of extras to it. So just kind of keep your eye on that as I zoom out. You see how much more natural it's looking and less glowing. And if you just kept doing that, but you could also then sample from the background color that you choose and paint a little bit of that in there to get rid of some of the glow. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do that's a little bit labor intensive to make your masking and your project even better. And the other thing is just a reminder, obviously you know this week what is due is the mask all around you, but then the following week you will need a mask that is just skin. And if you're lucky, you might have an area of skin that shares the background, meaning that part of this mask that you did for this week and the one for next week will share a common area. And so you could start with that mask and then change it from there. But in my case, I wasn't that lucky. And so I had to make this new mask here. And let me just get rid of every bit of color on here so you can see really what we're dealing with against the transparent background. So you can see the mask had to be made all around the skin, but some areas of hair even had to be masked out to keep the realistic things going in. Notice the eyebrows have a very gentle mask around them. Same thing with the eyelashes. The lips, I find if you do about a 50% mask out, that looks best because if you notice old people, their wrinkles are more pronounced in their face, but they still do go into the lips, just not quite as much. So I imagine very textured skin or alien skin would be very similar. And let me just show you another little trick here. If you ever want to turn a mask off temporarily, you just hover the mouse over it and then you can right click on it and select disable layer mask. Another tricky thing here, let me re-able it. So right click, enable, is if you just want to see what the mask looks like by itself, you can option click on it and then you get an idea of how that was achieved. So all of the black areas you can't see at all of the white areas you can totally see, and then the areas that are somewhere in between are the ones that you see a little bit less of. Okay, we'll talk to you in the Zoom meetings. Stay healthy.